Maybe.
Get on up here. Everybody, this is Prem, Lee, Barbosa.
Thank you very much, Jack. Thank you so much. What? You
Yes.
know, what a big buildup. Like, now I feel like I have to bring the energy.
That's right.
It's in there somewhere. I'll find it. Good afternoon, everyone. So wonderful to be here in Tampa on this, just what a gorgeous day. The weather could have gone in any direction, and it went in our direction.
Yes, it did.
In a good way.
Ooh, look at that. It's like a prophecy that you made true yet again, Prem.
Yeah, indeed. You know, I had done a Bitcoin meetup called Bitcoin Brunch. We did 200 weeks, so it's like almost 4 years of meetups. And that was my way in my community of trying to amplify Bitcoin, because when I started it, it was like everything was crypto. And I'm not an investor. I'm not a trader. To me, Bitcoin is a better money. And because it's a better money, it's the future of economics. And so I just wanted to have a conversation about Bitcoin.
Hear, hear. All right. Well, we're honored to have you, Prem. And please,
so
without further ado, everybody welcome Carly Benson, BJ Dichter, and Cedric is here. Cedric Youngelman. And the one and only PBX. Come on in, grab a microphone.
Cedric. Well, so we've got a bunch of media people sitting next to me. I'm not, I could be a media person sometimes, but I'm definitely a consumer of media. And in that sense, I think all of you can agree on the importance of media, the media that we consume and what's in it. And there's so many different ways to connect to an audience. And so these people, these wonderful people to my left here, are here to tell us a little bit about how they connect to the world and their why. Really, what I want to start with, I have the question written here, is what is the driving purpose of your efforts as a Bitcoiner? So Carly, won't you start it off, please? So you're head of VIP for the Bitcoin conference, if I understand correctly. You know, that's a very special and important role because you're dealing with a very different and niche crowd in comparison to the rest of your organization. So what is your driving purpose?
Well, hello. Yes, so anybody who buys a whale pass for the Bitcoin conference, they come through me and my team, and we deliver the experience for them. But to answer your question, the reason that I got into Bitcoin and into this space, and my two biggest driving values that I would say are freedom and experience. So obviously the freedom, I love that, the Bitcoin technology is very supportive of freedom on a personal level. I quit drinking alcohol in 2008, and that was my entry into personal freedom. And it's sort of kind of been the guiding light for me throughout my life. And when I shifted careers into this career, it continued to be the guiding light. And then on the experiential side, I love experiences. I love to travel. I've been to 28 countries and counting. And I landed in a space where I get to have experiences and deliver experiences. So I think I found my home.
That's wonderful. Well, Cedric, you do a podcast. It's called The Bitcoin Matrix. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that is wonderful. I'm jealous. Not that much. We all have to draw our own paths, and I think you're doing a great one and setting a great example. I think everyone here is setting a great example. Cedric, you do a podcast, The Bitcoin Matrix, and it's a long-form interview podcast. So you're sitting down and talking to people. You're getting deep into the details of things that interest you and that you consider to be important. Why do you do this? What drives you to do this? What's your goal? What's your purpose?
I started the show over 4 years ago in COVID. Turn on, I guess. I started the show during COVID. I was kind of trapped at home. I was really getting immersed in Bitcoin and studying Bitcoin, but actually at the office was where I got most of my work studying Bitcoin done at my fiat job. So at home, I wasn't really able to study Bitcoin as much as I'd like. And during COVID, I just wanted to figure out a new skill. I wanted to come out of COVID with a new skill. And I wanted to keep having conversations about Bitcoin, and I was exhausting the people in my life. Didn't want to talk to me about it anymore. So I did want to have long-form conversations about Bitcoin. I think that, half of life, or the game of life, if life is a game, is economics. And if you fail at half of the game of life, you fail the game of life. And I felt as a corporate accounting consultant working my fiat job that I was failing and I wasn't able to keep up. And it wasn't until Bitcoin that I found a life raft. So I wanted to continue having conversations about Bitcoin with people who could take the conversation way further than I could so I could continue to learn. I wanted to build a time capsule for my children so that even if no one listened to these conversations, like maybe my kids would, and like maybe I wouldn't have the answers in these conversations, but at least they would hear my questions. So I just like to have an opportunity to seek truth and provide a space for that. So I just spun up a little signal in my home office and started beaming out the Bitcoin matrix. And I guess, at the end of the day, it's a passion project. It's a labor of love for me. I pretty much do it for myself, maybe so that my wife doesn't listen to Peter McCormack all day, on what Bitcoin did. So that's why I do it.
I think so many people who are doing something in the Bitcoin space, whether it's working in the Bitcoin space or, participating in a meetup or, anything that people do, so oftentimes it's because our friends and family are tired of hearing us talk about Bitcoin. So we need to put that energy into something somewhat more productive, something like, we need to start planting seeds that are actually going to grow. It's like, okay, I spent all this energy and all this time trying, telling my cousins, telling my friends, and, they just keep, years keep passing by. And it's like the same excuses, I'm waiting for it to go to 80, then I'm going to get in. So PBX, thanks you for being with us here. What is your purpose? What drives you and your participation and what you're doing in this community?
Hey, man. Thanks. Yeah, what's my purpose? Right. Let's begin there. Let's get deep. So personally, how I got into Bitcoin was because I grew up on the internet, like most kids my generation. We were deep down the conspiracy rabbit hole, right? Growing up with YouTube, essentially. And we were living in this world where we saw our parents getting, diabetes, heart disease, all kinds of illnesses, where I thought to myself, I don't know if their sources are sound, right? I don't know if we should continue on this path. So I started doing my own research, essentially, at a young age, right? Bucking the trend in high school, debating people, questioning my professors, questioning my teachers, and just trying to seek some sort of a rational explanation as to why we are the biggest empire in all of human history, and also deploy the most capital into health and wellness, into our healthcare system than any other country, but we have the sickest population. So personally, I'm very motivated in just the quality of life. And that's what got me started into this Bitcoin journey, because I was seeking for something that was verifiably true. And with conspiracies on the internet, right, you can get lost. There's opportunists in that market as well who will, have a nugget of truth and then lead you into a very dark alley, right? So it's important to have verifiable truth. And that's something that for the first time when I came across Bitcoin with that open source blockchain, I felt like I found my home, and, that's what I wanted to build on. And so that's what got me into this space. But since then, I've joined a mining company. This is my buddy's company, actually. Very blessed to work in the space full time. And we experienced censorship, right? Under the Biden administration, choke point 2.0, we got to experience what it looks like to be on the other side of what is politically correct, right? And lost our bank accounts, right? Essentially had all of our channels demonetized and all this nonsense, right? So I got fed up with the mainstream media telling the population who we are and what we do. Right, I was like, we need to be forward facing. We need to get out there and be loud and let these people know that we are everyday Americans. We're everyday people worldwide, all joined together for a cause that is actually net positive, that is actually representing what America and our founding values do represent. And that is a unifying factor. That's something that needs to be understood. How do we gain representation? How do we stop from being discriminated against? Right. So I said, we got to step up. It's nice to be private, right? It's nice to have your privacy, right? It's nice to not have to take the flack that comes with being a forward-facing individual. But if nobody's going to do it, then we're just going to keep experiencing the same thing. We can't complain about it. So guys like Samuel Arms and guys like, Senator Joe, the work they're doing is, what we're seeing now is it is a complete 180. And that is because individuals like yourselves got involved and stepped up, right? And that's what it's about. Be the change you want to see, and that's what Bitcoin encapsulates.
There's a few themes I'm noticing in these answers, like underlying themes. So to close out this question before we get into the forward-thinking topics, BJ, welcome back. Why don't you tell us what is your driving purpose?
I think we could all answer this question in many different ways. I don't think there's one specific thing for any of us. I think it's a multitude of things that have influenced us in our lives. But if I had to move back to go look as far back in my life as possible, I was adopted. And I was adopted into a family that most of whom were executed during the Second World War. And during school, growing up from the age of 6 years old, we learned about genocide. We learned about all the really dark things that human beings are capable of. And one of the things I learned that became very evident at a very young age when we would ask in class, like, well, why didn't they leave? They couldn't. That was in a time where the world wasn't digital. What, are you going to take some gold with you and the Nazis are going to just let you get onto a ship and escape? Or cash? Like, it was a very different world. And my entire life, it always bothered me that people didn't have the ability to flee. But now they do. Because now you finally have, as I said before, we all know, money off the system. That is your insurance policy. And what I've noticed is there's people in the world that have this sort of collectivist PTSD from our background. And I want to moderate that by showing them you don't have to be as worried if things get really tough in the future, because now at least you have an option that wasn't there before. And that goes for everybody in the world. And I think that also helps to maybe moderate the world a little bit and bring some peace moving forward.
I think, so one of those themes that I was picking up on from your answers is like this form of expressing our own freedom, right? To us, Bitcoin is so important, and that's one of the reasons why we want to share it with people. But when maybe our friends and family aren't receptive to it, it's still very important. We know it's important for the world because it can make the world better. If Bitcoin is better money, and money is so important for the world economy, then a better money will therefore make the world economy better. How are you guys now? Let's go into, okay, what are you doing? What are the ways that we get Bitcoin into the minds of people? How are we setting narratives about how people are talking about Bitcoin? Because obviously there's many different competing narratives. Some of them have been talked about and alluded to here today. Bitcoin being associated with negative things. We don't talk so much about that these days, thankfully, right? We don't have to be dealing so much with the flack of, oh, Bitcoin's for drug dealers and money launderers. Yes, it's for them too, but it's also for us. And so the question therefore is, how do we spread Bitcoin knowledge to the masses? Why don't we start with BJ? You gave a really short answer, so I want to give you a little more time. How do we spread Bitcoin knowledge to the masses?
Well, as I alluded to earlier in the day, you figure out what tools that you have available and what access points you have to reach people. In my case, many of you know me here from the Trucker Convoy. So I put together this book, which is a story about the Trucker Convoy.
Honking for Freedom.
Honkingforfreedom.com, available at local retailers. But this is all the positive stories. I didn't focus on all the negative stuff. I just focused on us coming together. And it's written for people who did not support us. And in this are 2 chapters on Bitcoin and Bitcoin's role and how it gave us our lifeline during that protest. So I think we sometimes get so passionate about Bitcoin that we want to really ram it down people's throat. This is what Bitcoin is, now go buy it. But it is a process. It's a completely different framing to view the world. So if we do these little steps in the various things that we get involved in, whether it's advocacy groups, sometimes politics, or I don't know, you're a member of the Corvette Association, whatever, or sports, just introduce it into the conversation and get on people's radars subtly over time. It's becoming mainstream now. They're going to see the word Bitcoin all over the place. And that's already elicited some curiosity that wasn't there years ago. And I think that's the best way.
Carly, let me ask you, in your role dealing with VIPs, that P in VIP is person. So just because they're very important, they're still a person, and we got to connect with them. We have to reach them. So in your role, how are you connecting with people? Is it different because of the type of people that you're dealing with? And how do you cater your message, the messaging, the narrative for your role?
Yeah, great question. So what I think is funny is there has not been one panel up here today that has not mentioned the Bitcoin conference, whether that be Vegas, Miami, Nashville, or anywhere that we've been. We just had 30,000 people in Vegas. I hope most of you were there. If you're not, you're invited for next year because that's where we're going. What I love about the conference is that we cater to all people, all persons, so whether you're a pleb or you're someone in the industry or you're institutional or you are a high net worth individual and you're buying a whale pass, there's something for everybody. What we try to focus on with the whale pass is creating the experience. Like I told you, a lot of the times we had 2,000 VIPs in Las Vegas. Most of those people did not leave the VIP lounge. So they don't necessarily go to the main stage. They don't go to listen to all the talks. They come because of the networking. They come and they pay for the proximity. They're willing to pay a lot of money to get in the room with the people who are the movers and shakers of the space. So what we try to do is facilitate those conversations, those networking opportunities, whether it's a party or, just putting them all in a room together. And then we also do content sessions. So we're trying to be on the cutting edge of what they're most interested in hearing about. So whether you like it or not, all the politicians were there. Last year we had Trump at the conference. This year we had JD Vance. We had Eric Trump. We had Byron Donalds. So they're interested in hearing about how smart money is thinking about Bitcoin and where they're putting their money and what projects they're getting involved in. And I think what's most exciting to me, at least, about what we do at the conference is the network effects. Companies are born. People are investing into the space. A lot of these companies that you see here that are sponsoring either met at the conference or started their business at the conference. So that's really what we try to cater to is, these are the people that have money. They're investing into the space. They're starting projects. They're building companies. We're getting narratives on the news. So that's what we really try to cater to when we're thinking about the VIP experience for that typical type of person.
So you're dealing with, a very niche. So now let me move over to you, PBX, because I think what you guys are doing is much more general. And so can you address, how are you trying to reach the masses? I mean, you're over there doing interviews, you're doing media. So, what is your perspective on that? Who are you trying to reach and how are you trying to reach them?
Yeah, good question. So mainly we're focused on the XRP community. That's our target audience.
Killing me.
Just kidding. We are purist, but we want to reach a broader audience, right? So we want to bring the Bitcoin ethos to the mainstream. And how are we going to do that? It's essentially by having long form conversations, adding production value, right? If we showed them, the viewer, that, hey, we value this interview, right? We're going to go above and beyond to polish this thing up, to make it high value entertainment, then the average viewer will appreciate that, right? At least they'll hang around for the intro, right? 30 seconds. But you plant a little seed, right? So our goal initially was, how do we win the culture, right? Because we don't want to have to leave America to live in some citadel. We'd prefer to be able to stay in Florida, right? And have our Bitcoin too. And that's the way you can have your cake and eat it too, right? So you got to fight the fight, and you got to be forward facing. And it all started with Maddie and I launching and then JMD came on board, launching a Bitcoin meetup in Naples. And that quickly blossomed into having 100 people at a time. And this was, the first peak bull season, right? And so here we are in a room of adorable senior citizens in Naples, Florida, right? All learning about Bitcoin. And hey, you're an outlier, brother. This senior citizen will do more. He'll run faster, outbike me, outswim me. He's representing Naples well. Good to see you, man. But he was one of the early comers, one of the regulars, right? And this is what we love to see. We wanted to build community wherever we were at, right? We said we want to start a circular economy. We want people to know, because unfortunately in this space there's a lot of bullshit. Excuse my language, but there's a lot of innovation theater. There's a lot of scams, and I had been burnt quite a few times, and I wanted people to realize that you're not in this alone, right? There's people you can meet. Before you send your Bitcoin off anywhere, you should have a network of individuals that you cross-reference with, right? Like have somebody you can at least ask before you make that decision. And so we wanted to stop these people from getting a bad first impression, right, in their experience within their time in the space. And so we started giving away ledgers, doing meetups, and it was fun. But like you said, we quickly found ourselves, just in a room of 50 to 100 sweet people, but we were saying the same thing over and over again, and so at some point we realized we should probably film this and broadcast it to a bigger audience, right? We want to reach as many people as possible. And although, we're going to continue doing the communal work, there's so many more people that need to hear this message in a way that's digestible, relatable, right? And a lot of times, in the Bitcoin community, you see these very advanced people, the Bob Burnetts of the world. They're so intelligent, computer, science backgrounds, right? Most of the things they say just go over my head, right? So I'm just trying to keep up. But that's a very valuable part of the industry, right? Those are the kinds of people we point the Michael Saylors to talk to, right? They're the ones who are going to orange pill the the higher more traditional finance individuals. So we wanted to bridge that gap between culture and our community, and so we're doing that with a unconventional approach where we're gonna break stuff. We're going to build stuff. We're going to have fun, right? We're going to give away some solo Satoshi miners, some bit axes, right? And just try to orange pill people every day, get involved in the college campuses, and show up to places like this where we get to actually meet y'all and get to interact. Like Carly said at the conference, most of these VIPs are sequestered in their lounge. Here you get to shake hands and actually really get to know somebody. So there's something to be said about stepping in, and that's what it's about. So that's the journey we're on, and we're going to continue.
All right, so I'm going to be transitioning to my final question, but to stay on that second question, which is about how we're spreading the knowledge. Cedric, how long have you been doing your podcast?
Almost 5 years. Almost 5 years.
So tell me then, what have you learned in those 5 years, and what are you doing anything different now than when you started? Yeah, are you doing have you learned anything? Is anything different? The way that maybe the audience has received it, or the feedback you've gotten over those 5 years, has it changed anything? Have you grown as a media producer?
I'm going to say yes to all of that. A lot has, I guess, changed. The world has kind of changed around me. I've grown a lot as a person, I think, over the last 5 years. I think of Bitcoin as maybe boosters on my rocket. I don't think it really changes me at the core, but it enables certain core aspects or core competencies to rise to the surface that didn't on a fiat standard. So I'm definitely, Bitcoin definitely has changed me, but not maybe at an intrinsic level. It's just maybe enabled me, empowered me. I maybe am less nervous in interviews now. I've done more of them. I have more patience for them. I'm less worried about the outcomes, I guess. So I think that's made me a better interviewer maybe over time. My mom used to call me and want to charge me money every time I interrupted a guest. That was very early on. So, I learned, that was kind of the point of the show, is I wanted a show where guests could kind of speak and not be interrupted. So I have to learn, try not to talk and get really good at just being patient and letting it also, I think, the longer the show goes, the more I'm willing to learn in the show and have answers that actually surprise me. All
right. So my final question before we open it more generally, before if any audience wants to ask any questions, I wanted to ask, since you guys all have varying levels of experience in different segments of the industry, what doesn't work? Which strategies, which things do you see public figures in the space doing drives you up the wall? They keep doing it, and you're like, I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish they wouldn't do this. Why are they doing that? If you can think of something, I see some people nodding, BJ, you got something on your mind?
Have fun staying poor. Oh my God.
So toxicity, is that?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand why, but it's this when you want to appeal to somebody, you have to appeal to them emotionally. I mean, that's what I did in Ottawa. I focused on positivity. And you know what makes me a little bit crazy about the Bitcoin space? We're all often so negative. And it's like, oh my God, we finally have Bitcoin. We have something positive. And I actually tried to lobby our Conservative Party in Canada, and they're incompetent, by the way. But they make me crazy because here we have something like conservatives, nobody wants to listen to conservative politicians, right? Because we message from a spreadsheet and everybody falls asleep, right? But finally, we have something in their wheelhouse of economics that is aspirational, that will build a more positive future. Grab it, take yes for an answer. But politicians are really stupid in general, so they don't do that. But for me, that's what I'm trying to get us to, many of us in the space, to start to message more positively, use empathy. I know it's cheesy when people say emotional intelligence, but empathy, but it's true. Because none of us, and everybody's going to get upset at me with this, but none of us make rational decisions. We make emotional decisions and then we post-rationalize. Bitcoin is the ultimate post-rationalization tool. So reach people emotionally and then fill that gap with Bitcoin. That's how you can bring people into the space, in my opinion.
Now we got to get some more. Come on, because to me, definitely focusing on negativity, that's not good. I think it's really destructive.
I mean, it's
depresses
funny
people.
for jokes sometimes,
Yeah.
but
there's a time and a place, right? But if it's like the baseline, then the baseline is depressing.
I was going to say the same thing. Listen, I'm a Bitcoin maxi through and through in that I only buy Bitcoin. However, I think we're going to start to see things change in that you have to meet people where they are, which means you can't just be preaching at people, well, this, that, the other, have fun staying poor, which is fun and it's great. And I love Twitter and X for that. But in the world here where you are interacting with people from all different backgrounds, people have different interests, they have different concerns, they have different fears, you have to meet them where they are. So like, for example, Gary Cardone was on earlier. Grant Cardone took a long time, his brother, to come on over to the Bitcoin side. Why? He specifically told me in Vegas because he didn't want to listen to all the noise of the Bitcoin maxis preaching. And it was more, we had to meet him where he was. He likes cash flow. He likes real estate. So rather than preaching at people, I think you have to meet them where they are and you have to let them come to you and ask questions. So one thing I'm done with doing is trying to force Bitcoin on people. If you want to have a conversation about it, you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm not going to shove it down your throat. Eventually the world will, but I think that's one thing that we need to do better as Bitcoiners is really think about meeting people where they are.
There's like a fine line between, being zealous and just turning people off because you're so over emphatic. And, it's great to be enthusiastic. It's great to be passionate. But when we're interacting with other people, we have to also just be honest with ourselves about how are people receiving our message? Because, I saw someone with a shirt and I might agree with it. It was like inflation is theft. Now, I might agree with that, but we live in a society today where they literally teach the children that 2% inflation is a good, stable economy. So, if you're coming to a normie, so to speak, a pre-coiner, a no-coiner, and you're saying taxation is theft, as like an old libertarian screed, that's going to turn people off, even if you believe it. Who are you talking to? Are you trying to spread the message, or are you just trying to scream at someone and berate them and boost your own ego, which, everyone loves to stroke their own ego sometimes and feel right. We love to feel right. But I would rather change minds than feel right. Now, Cedric, 5 years, like, did you learn, what did you do wrong other than interrupting people that you don't do anymore?
I think one of the things people do wrong is in the beginning, you're trying to convince someone that Bitcoin is going to save the world. And you're trying to treat it like a Mike Tyson knockout fight. And you were trying to destroy everything they've ever believed in and throw it all at them at once. And that's exhausting. And at a minimum, they're looking at you like, I would never want to sound like you. So I don't want to believe in this thing because I'm not going to go to parties and talk like you. So I don't want to believe in this. So I think not like throwing it at people so hard. I think if you are afforded the opportunity and someone asks you a question about Bitcoin, try to keep it simple. I think Parker Lewis has really good advice, like stick to a few body punches. Like just get in like maybe 1 point. There's only 21 million. It's the only thing on earth is scarce. Just land a few body punches so that maybe they ask more questions. Don't take 3 hours of someone's time at a barbecue and try to tell them the monetary history of the world and why Bitcoin is the only answer. I mean, that's exhausting and it probably turns people off. It's one of the reasons I started to do the show is that I realized that was not working. In that manner. I think the best way to maybe get people on a Bitcoin standard is to lead by example. So, maybe you drive a used car so you could stack sats, or you pack your lunch and you bring it to the office, and maybe people over time see that and they see the price of Bitcoin increase, and then maybe they see you eating steak and ribeye at Ruth Chris every day, and they start asking questions about how you're able to do that and change. I don't know, but I think it's more about keeping it simple.
PBX, anything before I...
Yeah, dude, I'm gonna have to bring you to parties with me, man. I think we'll make a lethal combo. You can set up the jab, and I'll come in for the knockout punch. Because I love to dump the deepest, heaviest stuff on people, and that's because I know eventually they'll be like, that guy, he might have been onto something, right? Eventually they'll come around, and I like to drop it because to me this is a opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm not just some, This isn't a religion. This isn't a cult, right? What's beautiful about Bitcoin is that you have this immutable, open source global network that you can audit at any moment in time. And the reason that's such a big deal beyond the number go up element is because of what BJ Dichter described. For the first time, if the country you're living in wants to draft you for war and throw you into the meat grinder, you can opt out. And I think what that's going to do is going to redefine the relationship between government and citizens in a way that our founding fathers would be proud of, right? Where for the first time, we can actually take back control over our sovereignty the way we had with gold. If you look at what happened in 1971, right? What the fuck happened in 1971? That's when we departed from the gold standard. And since then, we've lost like 98% of purchasing power, right? So the dollar has lost 98% of purchasing power since 71. That's absolutely insane. When you look at that graph, that should black pill somebody, right? But then you want to orange pill them with hope, right? And I think the Bitcoin community goes beyond money. And this is what Chris Sullivan always talks about. It's like, don't measure the worth of your Bitcoin in dollars, right? Because you're holding on to the only scarce commodity in existence. There's no other thing that is truly finite beyond Bitcoin. And it's digital, sure, right? But we live in a digital age. And solar flares, you name it, whatever, none of that's going to shut us down, right? So we're living in a time where we can actually put our life's energy into something that our future generations can see the light of. And for me, as a young father, that's my call to action, right? It's like, that's what gets me up. That's why I do is I don't care about the money. I care about preserving what our founding fathers preserved. And they risked their lives. Signing that Declaration of Independence was a death wish. Right. And for us, I think the cypherpunks represent that. And we get to carry that baton now by communicating that message to the next generation beyond dollar denominated value. But take ownership, participate in the system. If you care about what it represents, this sovereignty, right, this freedom of speech, all these elements that come with it, this moral money, then you have to participate. Self-custody. It takes 15 minutes of watching a YouTube video to learn how to do that. Right. And once you do that, now you can leave your money offline for 100 years and it won't be touched, right? You just keep those 12 words somewhere and you're good to go, right? To me, that is such a serious thing that I feel the need to impress that on whoever I meet, and I don't regret it.
So, maybe Bitcoin is a declaration of independence for the internet. It's like, as long as this communication network is going to exist on this planet, we now have this medium of exchange that governments can't control. So let's start wrapping this up. Everyone, give me a quick plug about something you're working on or something you want people to pay attention to and something you're looking forward to in the next year or so. Carly, please.
All right. So we got Hong Kong coming up for the Bitcoin conference. It's in August. And then we have Abu Dhabi at the end of the year in December. So I'm excited about both of those, working on both of those. I just want to say, we're talking about amplifying Bitcoin, and we're talking about orange pilling people and how to reach the masses and all of this stuff. And I just want to tell you just like a very quick story. Your words matter, and you might not get someone right there in that moment where the light goes off and they got it and they're ready to buy Bitcoin. But you keep mentioning it. You keep planting the seed. For example, my dad, I talked to him for a year and a half probably about Bitcoin, and I was doing all the preaching and all this stuff. I come home and I'm visiting for the holidays, and he had some health stuff going on, and he texts me and he's like, "You need to call me, please." And I'm like, oh gosh, he's going to tell me something bad. He went to the doctor. I call him up and he's like, "Carly, I need you to buy me some Bitcoin." I'm like, yes. He had finally watched somebody else say all the things I already said, and however they said it landed. So the seeds that you plant, you are amplifying Bitcoin.
Water
so,
them, right?
keep watering it and have patience, because one day someone will call you and say, how do I do that? How do I buy Bitcoin again?
And at that point, and at that point, you got to sell. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Never.
Cedric, a plug, and what should we look forward to? What are you looking forward to?
Sure. I host the Bitcoin Matrix podcast. We look at Bitcoin through a philosophical lens, kind of examining the societal, cultural, and economic impacts of Bitcoin and the future of money on society. I'm also starting a new show with Paul Tarantino, presented by Byte Federal. It's called Bitcoin Center. It's live on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. We're doing it out of a studio I'm building for the Bitcoin Matrix. So there's a lot of new, exciting content to come. And I've had conversations already with a lot of people in the room, and I hope to meet more and have some more conversations with you guys. So look forward to it.
I'm looking forward to seeing this new setup. I'm looking for the new background, right?
Yeah.
PBX.
So we are currently wrapping up a series we did with Lawrence Lepard, the Big Prince, right? Legend, gold bug, Austrian economist, diehard, who has been a fantastic voice on our behalf. And I think his book, The Big Print, is going to orange pill all of the boomers. I genuinely believe that. And so our series right now is we're broadcasting that on Cypherpunked. That is our channel, Cypherpunked_. And our next few guests are absolutely insane, right? So we're already in good company with Larry Lepard and having done Dominic Frisbee and stuff. So there's so much awesome content to get into. But what we've got coming, thanks to the Bitcoin conference and us getting to meet these people, is going to blow you away. So, stay looking out for that.
Network effects, guys.
Everyone's working on great stuff.
There they are.
BJ, why don't you please close us out?
Yeah, I guess first thing to plug is, again, honkingforfreedom.com. And this is the subtle orange pill. This is for people, your friends and your family, who will not listen to you. This is the soft approach. And I promise it'll make them cry. And it does for everybody. So that's the way to bring them in. On Substack, bjdichter.substack.com. And I also produce a podcast with Professor Stephen Hicks.
What's it called?
Well, we have a podcast network. It was Open College. Stephen Hicks famously wrote the book Explaining Postmodernism, which Jordan Peterson often, references. So we're working on that. But what I'm looking forward to is not just our first round of funding, but this becoming a positive space. Look, we're at the point where the politicians are tripping over themselves, figuring out how to capture this voting block. And it's a difficult voting block to get because Bitcoin has something that appeals to all aspects of the political spectrum. But everybody else should be chasing us. But they seem to be getting scared away. The friendly toxicity that we have between each other, that's great. But for the general public, they need to see this as a welcoming, open, positive space that they can come in, ask stupid questions, and we're not going to ridicule them. We're going to bring them into the family and help change their lives and make it better for the future. I'm hoping and I'm optimistic that is going to be the Bitcoin space moving forward.
You know, these conversations could go on for hours because everyone who's on these panels is so passionate and knows so much about what they're doing. So please, everyone, just thank our guests up here, thank our panelists, and thank you all for being here at Bitcoin Day. You got, I think, one more panel coming up, and I hope to see you all at the soiree tonight.